don't you just go get yourself one of those medical alert buttons, old man?
A 72-year-old man walked into a gun shop on a Tuesday morning in rural Virginia, and 3 young employees laughed in his face. One of them told him he should get a medical alert button instead. The old man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He sat down in a folding chair near the entrance, pulled a small leather notebook from his coat pocket, and started writing. 40 minutes later, the shop owner walked through the front door, saw who was sitting there, and stopped dead in his tracks. The colour drained from his face. He stood at attention, right there in the middle of his own store, and said 5 words that silenced the entire room. "Sir, it's an honour." If you believe in respecting those who served, comment the word honour right now, because what happened next in that shop changed every single person inside it. His name was Arthur Calloway, 72 years old, 6'1" but slightly stooped now, with a thin silver moustache and hands that looked like they'd been carved from the old rope. He wore a faded canvas jacket, work boots that had seen better decades, and a plain ball cap with no logo on it. Nothing about him screamed significance. Nothing about him demanded a second glance. He lived alone in a small house about 8 miles outside of town on a plot of land his family had owned since before the interstate was built. His wife, Elaine, had passed 3 years earlier after a long fight with pancreatic cancer. Since then, it had just been Arthur and the quiet. He kept to himself mostly, mowed his lawn every Saturday, drove to the VFW on Wednesdays for coffee and cards, and kept a vegetable garden that Elaine had started decades ago, the one he couldn't bring himself to let go of even though half the rows were empty now. There had been a string of break-ins out on the rural roads near his property. 3 homes hit in 6 weeks, all while the owners were sleeping. One neighbour, a retired schoolteacher named Dorothy Hines, had woken up to a stranger standing over her bed. She screamed, the man ran, and she spent 2 weeks in the hospital because her heart couldn't take the shock. Arthur heard about it at the VFW. He didn't say much. He just nodded, finished his coffee, and drove home. The next morning he went to the gun shop. The store was called Blue Ridge Arms, a well-known outfit on the edge of town that had been in business for over 20 years. It was the kind of place with mounted deer heads on the walls, a long glass counter full of handguns and racks of rifles along the back. 3 employees were working the floor that morning. Tyler, who was 24 with a tactical vest and a beard he was clearly proud of. Marcus, 26, who talked like he'd spent more time watching gun review channels than actually shooting. And Devin, the youngest at 21, who mostly worked the register and stocked shelves but acted like he ran the place. The owner, a man named Ray Dalton, was out running errands. Arthur walked in slowly, the bell above the door jingling as he pushed it open. He stood just inside the threshold for a moment, looking around, getting his bearings. Tyler was the first to notice him. He elbowed Marcus and muttered something under his breath. Arthur approached the counter and took off his cap. His hair was thin and white, neatly combed. He said in a calm and steady voice that he was looking for a home defense firearm. Something reliable. Something he could keep in a lockbox beside his bed. Tyler leaned on the counter and looked him up and down. Home defense, he repeated like the words didn't quite fit the man standing in front of him. You sure you're not looking for a walking cane with a built-in flashlight? Marcus and Devin both laughed. Arthur didn't flinch. He said he was sure. Tyler pulled out a compact 9mm handgun and set it on the counter. He started talking fast, rattling off specs like he was trying to impress a buddy, not help a customer. Arthur reached for the weapon to examine it, and Tyler pulled it back slightly. Whoa, easy there, Gramps. Let's make sure you can hold it steady first. He turned to Marcus and grinned. You think they make one with a vibration alert so he doesn't forget it's in his hand? The laughter came again, louder this time. Devin chimed in from behind the register. Honestly, sir, you might be better off with one of those medical alert things. You know, I've fallen and I can't find my Glock. More laughter. Arthur looked at each of them in turn. His expression didn't change. There was no anger in his eyes, no embarrassment, no visible hurt. Just something quiet and level that none of them were experienced enough to read. He asked politely if there was someone else he could speak to. Tyler shrugged. The owner's not here. You're stuck with us. Arthur nodded once, slowly. Then he walked over to a folding chair near the front window, sat down, and pulled a small leather notebook from the inside pocket of his jacket. He uncapped a pen and began writing. The 3 employees exchanged looks. Tyler made a spinning gesture near his temple. They went back to talking amongst themselves, barely giving Arthur another thought. The old man just sat there, writing in his notebook, quiet as a stone. 38 minutes passed. The front door opened and a black Ford truck pulled into the spot right outside. The man who stepped through the entrance was Ray Dalton, the owner. 51 years old, broad-shouldered, with a grey crew cut and a firm handshake that could end an argument before it started. Ray had opened Blue Ridge Arms after retiring from the Marine Corps at the rank of Master Sergeant. 22 years of service, 3 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars. He ran the shop the same way he'd run his units, with discipline, respect, and no tolerance for nonsense. Ray stepped inside, carrying a box of inventory under one arm and a bag of sandwiches in the other. He was about to say something to Tyler when his eyes drifted to the folding chair near the window. He saw Arthur. The box slipped from under his arm and hit the floor with a heavy thud. The bag of sandwiches followed. Ray's face went blank, not angry, not confused, just completely recalibrated like a compass finding true north. Tyler started to speak. "Hey Ray, this old guy came in earlier wanting a..." Ray raised one hand without looking at him, and Tyler's mouth snapped shut. The entire store went quiet. Ray Dalton walked toward Arthur Calloway with a stride that was unmistakably military. His back straightened, his chin lifted. His arms fell precisely to his sides. When he reached the chair, he stopped 2 paces away, drew himself to full attention, and said, in a voice that was equal parts reverence and disbelief, "Colonel Calloway, sir, it's an honor." Arthur looked up from his notebook. A faint, tired smile crossed his face. "At ease, son," he said quietly. "I'm just here to buy a pistol." But Ray Dalton didn't move. Not yet. He stood there at attention for a full 5 seconds, his jaw tight, his eyes glassed over with something the 3 employees had never once seen from their boss. Emotion. Raw, unguarded, genuine emotion. Tyler, Marcus, and Devin looked at each other. Tyler mouthed the word "Colonel" with wide eyes. Ray finally relaxed his posture, but only slightly. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from Arthur, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He spoke quietly, but the store was so silent now that every word carried. "Boys," Ray said without turning around, "do you have any idea who this man is?" None of them spoke. Ray nodded slowly. "This is Colonel Arthur J. Calloway, United States Marine Corps, retired. He commanded the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines during Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah in 2004, one of the bloodiest urban battles since Hugh City." He paused, letting the weight of that settle. "I was a young corporal attached to his battalion, 23 years old, dumb as a bag of hammers and scared out of my mind." Arthur raised a hand gently. "Ray, you don't have to..." "Yes, I do, sir," Ray turned back to his employees. "On the 3rd night of the operation, our squad got pinned down in a building that was rigged to blow. We called for support. Nobody could get to us. The streets were a kill zone. Every route was compromised." He stopped. His voice cracked just once, and he cleared his throat before continuing. "Colonel Calloway came himself, not a captain, not a lieutenant. The battalion commander personally moved through 4 blocks of active combat, under fire the entire way to reach our position. He pulled 2 of my men out of that building with his own hands. One of them had taken shrapnel to the neck and couldn't walk. The colonel carried him." Ray paused for a moment. He looked down at his own hands, the same hands that had been shaking in that building 20 years ago. The same hands this man had grabbed and pulled towards safety when the ceiling started to come down. He could still smell the dust, the smoke, the copper tang of blood in the air. He could still hear the sound of rounds impacting the walls outside, and he could still hear the colonel's voice cutting through all of it, like a blade through fog, calm and absolute, saying, "Stay with me, Marine, we're walking out of here." And they did, every single one of them, because Arthur Calloway wouldn't leave without them. Ray stood up. He walked behind the counter and came back with a framed photograph that hung on the wall near the register. It showed a group of Marines in full combat gear, dirty, exhausted, standing in front of a shattered building. In the center of the group was a younger Arthur Calloway, taller, broader, with the same silver-blue eyes, holding the shoulder of a young Marine whose head was bandaged. That young Marine was Ray. "That photo was taken 6 hours after he saved our lives," Ray said. "I've had it on this wall since the day I opened this shop." He set the frame down gently on the counter. Then he looked directly at Tyler. "Now tell me again what you said to this man when he walked in." Tyler's face had gone completely white. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Marcus looked at the floor. Devin gripped the edge of the register like he was afraid the ground might open up beneath him. Arthur spoke up. "Ray, it's all right. They didn't know." "That's the point, sir," Ray said. "They didn't know, and they didn't care to find out." He turned back to the three of them. "A man walks into your store, a customer, a citizen, an American, and you mocked him. You made jokes about his age, about his hands, about his ability to defend his own home. You didn't ask his name. You didn't ask about his experience. You looked at him and decided he was less than you." Ray's voice was controlled, measured, but underneath it was something hard and unyielding. The tone of a man who had learned what respect meant not in a classroom but in a city that was on fire. "Colonel Calloway has more trigger time than every person in this room combined, including me. He qualified expert on every weapon platform the Marine Corps fielded for 3 decades. He taught marksmanship courses at Quantico. He trained the men who trained me." He paused. "And you told him to get a medical alert button." The silence that followed was the kind that doesn't need to be described because everyone who's ever felt it knows exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like the moment you realize you cannot take something back. Tyler was the first to step forward. His chin was trembling. He looked at Arthur and said, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I had no right to speak to you that way." Arthur looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You're young," he said. "Young people make mistakes. What matters is whether you learn from them." Marcus came next, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, sir. That was wrong." Arthur accepted with the same quiet nod. Devin didn't say anything at first. He just stood behind the register, blinking hard. Then he walked out from behind the counter, crossed the room and extended his hand. Arthur took it. Devin held on for a moment longer than expected, and when he pulled away he wiped his eyes with the back of his wrist and went back to his post without a word. Ray put a hand on Arthur's shoulder. "Now, Colonel, let's get you set up properly. What are you looking for?" Arthur explained about the break-ins, about Dorothy Hines, about the feeling of being alone in a house at night when you know someone's been coming down the road looking for easy targets. Ray listened without interrupting. Then he went to the back room and returned with a case. Inside was a Sig Sauer, P32O compact, chambered in 9mm. Clean, reliable, with a smooth trigger pull and manageable recoil. He also brought out a small biometric lockbox, the kind that opened with a fingerprint in under 2 seconds. "This is what I'd recommend for your situation, sir. Compact enough for a nightstand safe, accurate enough that you won't need to think twice, and dependable enough that it'll work when it matters." Arthur picked up the weapon with a grip that told every person in the room everything they needed to know.